حسبي الله لا إله إلا عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. 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 اللهم إني أسألك من فجات الخير وأعوذ بك من فجات الشر. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت. أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت وأبوء لك بنعمتك علي وأبوء بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت عليك توكلت وأنت رب العرش العظيم. ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشاء لم يكن ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله أحاط بكل شيء علما. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من شر نفسي ومن شر كل دابة أنت أخذ بناصيتها أن ربي على صراط مستقيم. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث ومن عذابك أستجير. أصلح لي شأني كله ولا تكلني إلى نفسي ولا إلى أحد من خلقك طرفة عين. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن وأعوذ بك من العجز والكسل وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل وأعوذ بك من غلبة وقهر الرجال. اللهم إني أسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين والدنيا يا وأهلي ومالي. اللهم استر عوراتي وآمن روعاتي. اللهم احفظني من بين يدي ومن خلفي وعن يميني وعن شمالي ومن فوقي وأعوذ بعظمتك أن أغتال من تحتي. اللهم أنت خلقتني وأنت تهديني وأنت تطعمني وأنت تسقيني وأنت تميتني وأنت تحييني وأنت على كل شيء قدير. أصبحنا على فطرة الإسلام وعلى كلمة إخلاص وعلى دين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى ملة أبينا إبراهيم حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. اللهم بك أصبحنا وبك أمسينا وبك نحيا وبك نموت وعليك نتوكل وعليك النشور. أصبحنا وأصبح الملك لله والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم فتحه ونصره ونوره وبركته وهداه. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم وخير ما فيه وخير قبله وخير ما بعده وأعوذ بك من شر هذا اليوم وشر ما فيه وشر ما قبله وشر ما بعده. اللهم ما أصبح بنعمة أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك له فلك الحمد ولك الشكر على ذلك. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلق ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلق ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلق ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله عدد ما خلق في السماء. سبحان الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. سبحان الله عدد ما بين ذلك. سبحان الله عدد ما هو خالق. الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في السماء. الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. الحمد لله عدد ما بين ذلك. الحمد لله عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في السماء. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما بين ذلك. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما هو خالق. الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في السماء. الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في الأرض. الله أكبر عدد ما بين ذلك. الله أكبر عدد ما هو خالق. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في السماء. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في الأرض. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما بين ذلك. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير، عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير، عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير، عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله، عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلاما دائما بدوام ملك الله، وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله، عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلاما دائما بدوام ملك الله، وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله، عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلاما دائما بدوام ملك الله، وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. الفاتحة إلى روح سيدنا حبيبنا وشافينا ومولانا قرة أعيننا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله الطيبين وأصحابه الأكرمين، ثم إلى روح سيدنا الحبيب عبد الله بن الحدب علي، وإلى أن الله تغشى والمغفرة ويسكن في الجنة، وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. نويت وتعلم وتعليم وتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والفائدة والاستفادة والحث على تمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلائل الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. Can people hear?
Yes.
Jazakumullah khairan. Okay, so we're continuing with the book of Ihya Ulumuddin by Imam al-Ghazali, and we're still on the first book within the collection of 40 books. 40 books are those which comprise the text which is known as Ihya Ulumuddin. The first 10 of which are about the outward beliefs and knowledge of the Sharia, the outward forms of Islam, including, first of all, knowledge, and then prayer, fasting, etc. And then the next 10 are about interactions between people, for example, trade, marriage, divorce. And then the next 10 are about the muhlikat, the things that destroy the soul, destroy your state, your inner being. And then finally, the last 10 chapters are those things that can put right your state, and these are the munjiat. And at the very beginning of this book is Kitab al-Ilm. So in this we talked about the fada'il of ilm, what the status of knowledge is, and we discussed the categories of knowledge being that which is compulsory based on the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, "Talab al-ilm faridatun ala kulli Muslim," that seeking knowledge is a compulsion, as a must for all believers, of all Muslims. And in there we also talked about something of the benefits of teaching, the benefits of studying, and the benefits of inquiry. And just to remind us of one of the hadith that's mentioned is that al-ilm kal-ma'adin, that knowledge is like buried treasure or treasure stores. And the key to the treasure is the question. And the person that asks the question is blessed. There are 4 people that get khair. One is the person who asks the question. The second is the person who answers the question. The third is the person who witnesses the question. And the fourth is the person that loves one of that loves the 3 people. In other words, loves knowledge. So knowledge is something which is the basis of not only this book, but everything that we do in the deen. Then we came to the categories of knowledge and how these fall into that which is a compulsion on everybody and that which is a compulsion on the community. And then as we discussed what the compulsions upon the community are, we included things like the more detailed aspects of of jurisprudence, of fiqh. We included things, or he included things like hujama, cupping, because his argument is that a society requires health, and a hujama, cupping, is one element of how the society functions. We entered into a discussion at that point about how important perhaps other things might be in our society now, and we got diverted into the coffee, in a discussion about whether coffee and coffee making has a particularly important role in our society and our community. But this would be something which would be to help the society function. Then we went on to a discussion of where does jurisprudence fit in the individual understanding of knowledge, or where does the jurist fit? And we mentioned a hadith a couple of weeks ago where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says there are only three people that answer questions. There's the mufti, the person who's allowed to give fatwa because they know, and then there's he's considered to be what the hadith describes as amir, the one who has the role and the responsibility for this matter. And then there's ma'mur, the person that's been given the role by somebody else on behalf of the ruler. And then finally there's the mukallif, the person who doesn't really have a role, doesn't have a right, but still talks anyway. And this person will carry the burden of speaking without a responsibility, without a role, and just basically doing what most people do at the moment, which is they just post things on social media without any reference to real knowledge. And so he describes the society that we're living in very well. And then the last thing we did, which was last week, we explored, or the Imam al-Ghazali explored that a bit further, and how knowledge of fiqh, of jurisprudence, is really limited to the outer form of the religion, and that the reality of knowledge is much deeper than that. And then we finished with the example of the Qadi Abu Yusuf, who at the end of each year he would give all of his wealth to his wife. He would donate and give all his wealth to his wife. So he hadn't had it for a full year, and then after a few weeks, he would then ask for it back, so that she didn't have it for a full year. So neither of them had to pay zakat. And when this came to Imam al-Ghazali, when this came to Imam Abu Hanifa, when فحكى ذلك لأبي حنيفة رحمه الله تعالى فقال ذلك من فقهه وصدقه. He says this is because of his knowledge of fiqh, and he spoke the truth. He didn't do anything wrong. And clearly what this is indicating is that fiqh, jurisprudence, is not about the essence of knowledge. The essence of knowledge is clearly, Abu Yusuf clearly on this point has not gone wrong, because he knows what the law is, but he's not understood or not applied the reality of the law. And he was giving this is at a level of zakat, and he gave this as one of the examples of how we should understand the relationship between outer knowledge, so to speak, or the knowledge of rulings, and the reality of knowledge. And then he moves on, and this is where we're going to continue today, whereas the knowledge of halal and haram there's more to it than just knowing the rules. And that's where we continue from here. So we go back to the text where Imam al-Ghazali says, وَأَمَّا الْحَلَالَ وَالْحَرَامُ فَالْوَرَعُ عَنِ الْحَرَامِ مِنَ الدِّينِ وَلَكِنَ الْوَرَعُ لَهُ أَرْبَ مَرَاتِبٍ. He says that halal and haram it's something important, that the jurists need to know this, and we as a community need to know this. But we should know that al-wara' is part of the deen. Al-wara' is part of it. What does wara' mean? It means, it's translated by Dr. Mustafa Badwi as scrupulousness. I would translate it as being careful, taking care of the rules is what is implied in this concept of wara'. And he says, and I think if we go to the translation, the more modern translation, which is part of the work of Hamza Yusuf and others, is this text here. This is a translation that I've, alhamdulillah, borrowed while I'm here in Norway. So this is translated by Kenneth Honerkamp with a forward by Hamza Yusuf. And he uses the word, I'll read from the English. As for the permitted and prohibited, it is clear that scrupulous abstinence from the prohibited is an aspect of religion. So again, he calls it scrupulous abstinence. What does it actually mean? It means being careful, being extra careful about what is halal and what is haram. And an example of this is there was a scholar who had traveled from Naishapur to Baghdad, returned to Baghdad after collecting hadith, and he realized that he'd borrowed a pen. And when he got to Baghdad, he realized that this pen was in his bag. So he went all the way back to return the pen. This is because he was careful about what was halal and what was haram, and he was scared that this might be considered stealing, and he's fallen into the haram. Perhaps that when he used the pen for writing while he was in Baghdad, then the consequence of this is that that work or that piece of work would lack barakah. So this is what the meaning of what this is an example of wara'a. And he says that this has al-wara'a lahu arba maratib. He says that there's 4 levels to this. And the reason why he's giving this as an example is showing that the fuqaha, the jurists, the scholars of the outward knowledge only deal with one aspect of the deen. And this is the first of the 4 levels. So let's look at what those 4 levels are. Al-awwal, al-wara' alladhi yashtarat fi adalat al-shahada. وهو الذي يخرج بتركه الإنسان عن أهلية الشهادة والقضاء والولاية وهو الاحتراز عن الحرام الظاهر. So he says, as for the first type, this is what is related to the level of scrupulous abstinence, meaning staying away from that which is haram. It tells you, it gives you the ruling on what that person is like, what in terms of, can that person be a judge? Is that person still a Muslim? Is that person, is their shahada valid for things like marriage? Are they allowed to take responsibilities politically, legally? So this level of wara, the jurist talks about, and the jurist is limited to that level. What is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So this is al-awwal, is to do with this. Walakin athani, the second level, athaniya wara'u salihin. This is the scrupulous abstinence of the righteous one. So this is just at the level of the Muslims, and this is what the scholars talk about. But the next level up is the wara'u, the abstinence of the righteous ones. وهو التقوى من الشبهات، التقى من الشبهات التي يتقابل فيها الاحتمالات. قال صلى الله عليه وسلم دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك. Now here, what we've moved from is that which is purely what takes you out of Islam, what keeps you in Islam, what is acceptable in Islam. And that's what most muftis are limited to. But this level is taking you to that which is the way of the righteous ones. And it's based on the hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, Da' ma yuribuka ila ma la yuribuka. Alhamdulillah, we're blessed here in Norway. This is actually one of the hadith that we studied yesterday, which means leave that which makes you doubt for that which doesn't make you doubt. So now it's not about simply halal and haram, it's about your relationship with the halal and the haram. Is that this may be halal, but I'm staying away from it because there's some doubt involved in it. وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم الإثم حزاز القلوب, حزاز القلوب. That the اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه. عفوا منكم, my apologies. The second level, second type of is where you're moving to this level. And he quotes another hadith, al-itham Hazaz al-qulub. Hazaz al-qulub is an interesting phrase. He translated it, sin slices into hearts. This is, but I'm not quite sure I'm happy with this translation. Let's go to look at what the word actually means and how it is applying the context of the way that Imam al-Ghazali is. Hazaz means to cut, the thing that cuts. So al-itham is that which is, in another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that al-itham ma haqa fi nafsika, that which makes you move, turns inside you. So here, when you see something and you're not comfortable with it, and I'll just give you the example of a discussion that we just had. Somebody needs to meet tomorrow, and I don't live here in Norway, and they said we're going to meet at such and such a cafe. And for me, that sounds all right. And then one of the brothers says, but they're boycotting that cafe. And all of a sudden, we've got to a point now, well, actually, I'm not comfortable going to this place. Now, we're not saying it's haram to go there, but the discomfort that we feel is something which is to do with the halal and haram, but it's beyond halal and haram. Now it's about your relationship with the things that you're eating or the things that you're drinking. Because al-itham, according to another hadith, is that which makes you feel discomfort within you. And that which makes your heart at peace is what we call al-bir. So the Prophet ﷺ says, somebody came to him and says, Ji'tu yas'aluka an al-bir. Ji'tu as'aluka an al-bir. I came to ask you about righteousness. And he says, righteousness is that which makes you feel comfortable within yourself, within it. And that which is itham is that which makes you feel discomfort. So when you start to worry about it, I'm not quite sure about this, I'm not sure about that, then it's not a question of halal or haram, it's about a question of how you relate to that thing. And the fact that you're in doubt about it, or the fact that your heart is not at peace with it, then it is considered to be itham or sin. But here, obviously, sin doesn't mean doing haram. It means it would better be translated as I think we use the word sin for now. That's what he used. He says sin slices into the heart. What it means is that thing eats up your heart by being in a state of disturbance about whether this is good or this is bad. I'll give another example just from yesterday. We were talking about one thing, which was, we talked about smoking based on this hadith and another hadith, la dar wa la dirar. There should be no harming. And they entered into a discussion about smoking, which I just listened to. And then I asked a doctor who happened to be there, says, does smoking damage you? She said, yes. I says, well, if it damages you based on this hadith, you shouldn't do it. So then somebody asked about something else. Oh, what about stocks and shares? Is that halal? Why was he asking this? Because he himself was investing, but he didn't feel comfortable about it because he knew there was something not quite right with what he was doing. So we ended up having this discussion about what does itham mean? What does wrongdoing do? What does it actually mean? And according to the hadith, it's not simply this is halal, this is haram, is that which was in you. So the wara of the salihin is about this feeling within you. And it says, al-itham hazaz al-qulub. When you're in this state, it cuts up your heart. It damages you. Because if you're constantly in a place where you're not sure, is this right or this is wrong, you won't be able to move forward with your journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here, we're not just talking about one level of this is halal, therefore you're okay to do it. This is wrong. It'll take you, so wrong, it'll take you out. This is the role of the fuqaha, the scholars. But now the second level is the role of the salihin, of the righteous ones. والثالثة ورع المتقين وهو ترك الحلال المحض الذي يخاف منه أداوه إلى الحرام. Then it's leaving that which is, this is the level of wara of the muttaqin, not just the righteous ones, but perhaps the word best is used, the pious ones, the ones who are one step beyond just being good. These people are actually careful to the level that they have taqwa. What does taqwa mean? It means to stay away from things. So here the person stays away from something, even though it's probably halal, but I still stay away from it out of taqwa. So taqwa is that which he describes here. ثالث ورع المتقين هو ترك الحال محض الذي يخاف منه أداوة إلى الحرام. That it might lead you into haram. It might lead, not that it's haram, but by doing this, eating this particular thing, it might lead you to this, or doing this particular thing might lead you into something which is worse. So this is the third category, and he says, لا يكون الرجل من المتقين حتى يدعو ما لا بأس به مخافة مما بأس. So this is a hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said that at-taqwa, the meaning of taqwa is that which when a man will be counted among the muttaqin, the people of taqwa, the people of piety, when he leaves that which has nothing, that is fine, that which la ba'sa fihi, there's no harm in it, there's nothing wrong with it, but he leaves it mukhafatan mimma bihi ba's, that he fears that what it might contain might be wrongful. I'll give you an example of that. Is we talk about trade and where we buy food from. Now, the cheese, okay, we take cheese as being halal, but so there's nothing specifically wrong with this, but I will choose not to buy cheese from that shop, even though the cheese is halal. The reason why is because that shop sells alcohol, and perhaps some of the profit that has been made from alcohol has been used to discount the cheese or whatever the case. But I'd just rather stay away from that, and I'll go to the shop down the road, which is a corner shop, and they have no alcohol. They don't have any loans because they're too poor. The food might be a little bit more expensive, but I know who the people are. So here, you're leaving that which is halal for that which is halal. But the reason you're doing it is because perhaps that is more certain about the background to the halal. So the thing itself is not haram, but the context of the situation. So therefore, and I remember when the first time Sheikh Noor Keller came to visit me, he said before he came to, he says, I hope you, this is many, many years ago before he was a sheikh, he said, I hope you don't take offense, but I won't eat in your house. I'll drink water, but I won't eat in your house unless you tell me where you buy everything from. And most people would have thought, well, who do you think you are? And I actually thought, wow. He says, so where should I buy things? He says, if you buy fruit from the store, the market in the street, I'll eat the fruit. But if you buy it from a supermarket, I won't eat it. And so I made sure that everything that I bought, I knew exactly where it was bought from. He came to the house and he still only drank water, even though I told him where every fruit came from. And some people maybe, but I thought this is a man of taqwa. Based on this hadith, this is how he lived his life. So here's the first level of halal and haram. It's just basic. Then there's another level which is about being careful to the level that you leave that which it might be doubtful. Then there's another level, you don't even have doubt about it, but you don't want to get involved because of the context. And this is a thalitha. And then وذلك مثل التورع عن التحدث بأحوال الناس خيفة من الانجرار إلى غيبة والتورع عن أكل الشهوات خيفة منها هيجان النشاط والبطر المؤدي إلى مقارفة المحظورات. So again, I'll just read how he translated this. He says that the third type is the abstinence of the pious. This is to forgo that which is undoubtedly lawful if one fears it could lead to the lawful. He, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, no one is pious until he abstains from what is not objectionable out of fear of what is objectionable. Examples of this would be to avoid taking people's circumstances out of fear of being drawn into slander, and to abstain from indulging desires out of fear of stirring up impulsive and reckless behavior that might tempt one to commit forbidden acts. Perhaps a better example, a better explanation of this would be that there's a situation. I gave you the situation of our teacher, Sheikh Noor Keller, but there's also a more common situation where somebody invites you to a meal. you know they're Muslim, you know the meal is coming from Sultan Tipu's restaurant, which is a very halal restaurant, and you know they're very good. They even got the name of a Muslim hero um, as its title. This is like Bakka Bakka Halal. But when they bring it to the house, the people that are going to be eating there, they might be the kind of people that crack dirty jokes, that speak behind people's backs. So the food is halal, but you still avoid going to eat there because of the company might lead you into something which is haram. And that's what is the third level. And then it goes on to a fourth level. الرابع ورع الصديقين وهو الإعراض عما سوى الله تعالى خوفا من صرف الساعة من الأمر إلى ما لا يفيد زيادة القرب زيادة قرب من عند الله عز وجل وإن كان يعلم أن يتحقق أنه لا يفضي إلى الحرام. And then the next level, he says, the fourth type is the abstinence of the voracious. I don't know if I would use the word voracious. Siddiqeen is those people who are of the highest level of belief in Allah subhanahu. They are Siddiqeen. They are just one level below prophecy. They are the highest level that a person can come without actually receiving prophecy. And of course, the highest of these is the Siddiq. And when we say as-Siddiq, we're referring to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And according to the understanding of the scholars, is that he reached this level because of his closeness and his understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he's not a prophet. So this next level is the highest level of humanity. He goes on to say it is a turning away from what is other than God, out of fear of being diverted for even a moment. So here he's not questioning whether things are halal or haram. He's just looking at things. Does this take me to Allah or doesn't take me to Allah? And perhaps one of the best examples of this is Imam al-Shafi'i. Imam al-Shafi'i, radiallahu anhu, was known to avoid eating for long periods of time. So was many others, like Imam al-Nawawi. And on one occasion, he came to visit his student, Ahmed ibn Hanbal, in Baghdad. When he got there, he got there, and Ahmed ibn Hanbal's daughter was told to prepare food, lots of the best possible food she could prepare for the great scholar Imam Shafi. So Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal has instructed his daughter to prepare food. She prepares all this food, and she wants to see who this man is. He comes out, and his eyes light up when he sees the food, and he just eats from every plate. And she's thinking, this is not the adab of my father. You know, she was surprised at how Imam Shafi was eating, because this is not how my father behaves, and he's the sheikh of my father. So she was quite disturbed by this. And then later she was listening to the conversation as the Imam Shafi left, said farewell to her father, and he mentioned it. He thanked the sheikh, his student, Sheikh Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, and said one of the things that was so beautiful about this journey was when you presented your food, because when I looked, all I could see was light emanating from everything on the plate. And he said, I haven't eaten for such and such a period, like weeks. He hadn't eaten anything, because everywhere he went, the food looked dark, and he had a feeling that this is not taking him to Allah. And I came to Baghdad, and I witnessed this food, and I ate everything that was there. So for him, it's not a question of halal and haram. It's a question, is this going to take me to Allah or not? So this is the example. He says, الرابع ورع الصديقين هو إعراض عما سوى الله تعالى خوفا من صرف الساعة من الأمر إلى ما لا يفيد زيادة قرب عند الله عز وجل إن كان يعلم ويتحقق أنه لا يفضي إلى الحرام. So that everything that they do, or everything they eat, everything about them is to do with, does this take me to Allah or not? If it doesn't, then I'll stay away from it. So one level is da' ma yuribuk ila ma la, leave that which makes you doubt for that which doesn't make you doubt. Here, it's not whether it's any doubt, it's just, does it take me to Allah? So here it's talking about a fourth level. فهذه درجات. So these levels, كلها خارجة عن نظر الفقيه إلا الدرجة الأولى. So we've talked about 4 levels. The wara' of the what is halal and haram. There's the second level, the wara' of the salihin. The third level, the wara' of the muttaqin. And finally, the wara' of the siddiqeen. And he says that fiqh, the jurist can only talk about the basic level. And that's why there's a limit. والفقيه لا يتك عفوا فهذه درجات كلها خارج عن النظر للفقيه إلا درجة الأولى وهو ورع الشهود والقضاء وما يقدح في العدالة والقيام بذلك لا ينفع الإثم في الآخرة. So all the scholars talk about is he still Muslim? Has he left Islam? Do we still accept his shahada? Is it okay for this person to be a judge? What is the punishment for this? This is what, but all the other levels it doesn't go to. It says, لا ينفع الإثم في الآخرة. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم استفتي قلبك وإن أفتوك. So why did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say when he talked about ithm? So he said, what is bir, what is good action, what is bad action? He says, good action is that which makes you feel peaceful, but the bad action is that which makes you feel discomfort. And he says, what did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? He says, istafti qalbak, ask your heart. In aftuka, even if the people, it's okay, it's halal, it's halal, it's halal. You ask your heart, and if your heart tells you it's not okay, avoid it. So this hadith tells you this is the reality of talking about of wara' of al-halal and haram. But the faqih, the jurist, can't do this. فالفقيه لا يتكلم في حزازات القلوب. This doesn't talk about what cuts into the heart. وكيفية العمل بها. And it doesn't teach you how to deal with these emotions that are going within you. بل فيها يقدح في العدالة فقط. All it talks about is what is right and what is wrong. فإن جميع النظر الفقيه فإن جميع النظر الفقيه مرتبطا بالدنيا. That actually the limit of the scholar, of the faqih, of the jurist, is this worldly realm. بها صلاح الطريق الآخر بها صلاح الطريق الآخرة. So it is part of the journey towards the next world, because in the basic level you need to know what is halal and haram, but it doesn't go any further than that. فإن تكلم في شيء من صفات القلب وأحكام الآخرة فذلك يدخل في كلامه على سبيل التفضل كما قد يدخل في كلامه شيئا من الطب والحساب والنجوم وعلم الكلام كما تدخل الحكمة في النحو والشعر. So here what he's saying all these degrees are beyond the scope of the jurist except the first degree, which is abstention from anything that would invalidate one's legal testimony, ability to be judged, or anything that undermines one's overall integrity. This being established, however, does not eliminate the sin in the hereafter. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Abisa, seek counsel from your heart, even though they counsel you, even though they counsel you, even though they counsel you. The jurist does not speak of the predilections of the heart or the manner of dealing with them. As we just said, this is a kind of fancy way of saying what I tried to say, is that it doesn't talk about your heart. The faqih can't talk about your heart. It can't talk about those emotions. It can't talk about the reality of how you deal with things like cryptocurrency. They can give you halal, haram, but it can't talk about how you deal with it. It can't So this is what it's saying in this point. Rather, he speaks only of that which undermines. Thus, the regard of the jurist is wholly oriented toward the worldly aspects of life, and that are the basis of the path to the hereafter. So this is the basic roots of how to travel, but it doesn't talk. He's speaking of sin, the attributes of the heart or the tenets of the hereafter would enter the discourse as an intrusion in the same way any aspect of medicine, mathematics, astronomy, or theology would enter his discourse as an intrusion. It is similar to wisdom entering into the fields of grammar and poetry. So what he's saying here is that there is one level of knowledge, which is this basic level, but there's a level which is higher than that, and where you try to introduce a deeper interpretation, it will become confused, because it's like reading poetry, and all you do in the poetry is you analyze the grammar rather than listening to the words. And this is where the realms of knowledge need to be clarified, and that where we've said that it's a basis of, it doesn't go beyond that. And if you want to understand grammar, you understand grammar. And if you want to understand the reality of the poetry, you need to be able to taste the poetry. In the same way that this deen is not about simply learning rules, it's about tasting the reality of that. Then he goes on to we'll finish with the statement of Sufyan al-Thawri. وكان سفيان الثوري وهو إمام علم الظاهر ويقول إن الطلب هذا ليس من زاد الآخرة كيف وقد اتفقوا على أن الشرف في العلم والعمل في الشرف في العلم العمل به فكيف يظن أنه علم الظاهر واللعان والسلم والإجارة والصرف من تعلم هذه الأمور يتقرب بها إلى الله تعالى فهو مجنون وإنما العمل بالقلب والجوارح في الطاعات والشرف هو تلك الأعمال. So in essence what he's saying is that the purpose of learning all of these things is that you act, and the reality is in the prayer, not knowing the rules of the prayer. So if you know the rules of the prayer but you don't have the prayer, then what was the benefit of this? Going back to the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa wa qalbin la yakhsha wa du'a la yusma wa nafsin la yashba. He made dua isti'adah from four things. The first one was knowledge which has no benefit. What is knowledge that is no benefit? Is that which doesn't lead to an action. So having the rules of fiqh that doesn't lead to action is one of the things the Prophet ﷺ actually sought refuge from. The second was qalbun la yakhsha, a heart that doesn't feel. Even when you pray, if the prayer is just about going up and down, up and down, up and down, but there's no feeling in it, then there's no heart. And this is one of the second things. وَقَلْبًا لَا يَخْشَى وَالدُّعَى لَا يَسْمَعُ. And a prayer that isn't answered. Why wouldn't it be answered? Because all it is exercise. Going up, down, up, down, up, down. There's no feeling in it. And therefore, when the person turns to pray, oh, Allah, give me this, Allah might not listen because you haven't done what He wants, which is to come to Him. And then finally, وَنَفْسٍ لَا يَشْبَعُ. And what will happen is that the nafs, the ego, will never be satisfied by this knowledge. Why? It gives you knowledge, but it's not dealing with the real essence of this. And he says, he's quoting Sayyidina Sufyan al-Thawri, seeking this knowledge is not provision for the next world. How could this be? While it is agreed upon that the eminence of knowledge in its performance, how could one suppose that it is the knowledge of oaths and matters of adultery, divorce, repudiation, buying and selling, and all of this? Whoever learns these matters in order to attain proximity to Allah can only do this by practicing. But if he thinks that he can do it without practicing, then he's insane. He's majnoon. Acts of obedience are those in which the heart and limbs are in tune. And the eminence of this knowledge, the reality of this knowledge, is whether you practice. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not just to give us knowledge, but to give us practice. He protects our hearts from knowledge which isn't beneficial. He protects our hearts from not feeling the emotions towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not understanding Him in hope and in fear. We ask Allah to protect us from being in a state where He doesn't listen to our du'as. And likewise, that our nafs overcomes our minds and our bodies, and we never find satisfaction. We're going to stop there. I'm not sure if Sayyid Abdullah is able to, for a couple of minutes, open questions. If he can, then inshallah, I'm willing to try and answer as best I can. And if not, then we'll leave it for another time.
Inshallah, we will encourage people to ask questions. I'll recite a qasidah and they'll give I'll give time for people to formulate their questions, and then we'll get back to you the question and answers.
Inshallah, we'll hear your voice singing from your father, your grandfather, inshallah.
ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله من الله نرجو غفران لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله من الله نرجو غفران عليك بتقوى الله في السر والعلان وقلبك نظفه من الرجس والدران وخالف هوى النفس التي ليس قصدها سوى الجمع للدار التي عاشها المحان لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
لا
لا
إله.
إله إلا الله من الله نرجو غفران وإسحاب ذوي المعروف والعلم والهدى وجاني ولا تصحاب هديت من افتتان وإن ترضى بالمقصوم عشت مناعما وإن لم تكن ترضى به عشت في الحزان لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله من الله نرجو غفران وصلي بقلب حاضر غار غافلين ولا تلحوا عن ذكر المقابر والكفان وما هذه الدنيا بدار إقامة وما هي إلا طريقي إلى الوطن لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله من الله نرجو غفران وما الدار إلا جنة لمن اتقى ونار لمن لم يتق الله فاسمعان فيا رب عاملنا بلطفك واكفنا بجودك واعصمنا من الزيغ والفتان لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله من الله نرجو غفران ووفق وساد واصله الوكل واهدنا بسنة خير الخلق والسيد والحسن عليه صلاة الله ثم سلامه صلاة وتسليما إلى آخر الزمان لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله من الله نرجو غفران. For those who have any questions, you can ask directly to Sheikh, inshallah, even without typing.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Wa alaikum salam. How are you, Sayyid Abdullah?
I'm good. Sure. How are you? Are you
I'm
still
well.
in Oslo?
Yep, still in Oslo, inshallah.
So you mentioned earlier somebody who is wara will ask his heart whether something that is halal could still be haram. Yeah. I think for ordinary folks like me, we hear whispers all the time in our heart. So when do we listen and when do we not listen to our heart?
Very good question. Right. When the heart is healthy, then it will be able to just know, as with the case of Imam Shafi'i, they will just look at the food and they will know that it's got blessing. We're not at that level, most of us, we're not at that level. But what we do have is we have a feeling within our hearts. The heart, if it's got any kind of connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will feel discomfort when it's displeasing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that basic principle of the feeling discomfort, not knowing is it halal or haram, not knowing this way or that way, but just that sense of discomfort. When somebody has wara'a, has this abstinence, when they're in that state, they'll avoid going down this road because they don't want to do things based on this what he says, itham. This sin is maybe not quite the right word here, but certainly this lower kind of character. We're always aspiring to a higher level, and by aspiring to a higher level, whenever we're in this state of discomfort, we'll avoid it. Many of us don't even get to that level where we have a level of discomfort. So what we need to do then is to go and ask. Occasionally, we need to rely on the scholars about the take advice from those. But again, the feeling of discomfort will tell you whether that advice is going to be beneficial to your heart. So in essence, it is about the heart. But when the heart is so damaged that it can't know, it turns to somebody and just says, just tell me, Sheikh, just tell me. And this happens so often. Just tell me, should I do this or not? And that's also fine, because what you've done is you've handed your heart, so to speak, over to somebody who you've given authority to. And then when they says, just don't do that. Then again, when they say don't do that, your heart finds this tranquility in their words, because you know that's what I need to do. And then, so again, it's the heart that helps you move forward, even though you've handed the questioning about the thing to somebody else. But when they keep saying this, no, this is halal, this is haram, and they are still in a state of doubt, you avoid it. You just avoid those situations where your heart is not settled and at peace, inshallah. Allah knows best.
I think we also need to reconcile, where Islam is about certainty, if because you can't sort of base your actions based, on uncertainty, right? You're not sure, don't. And we also supposed to be certain. So if you're confident, then it is not haram, then it's okay.
Yeah, and even the food will taste better when it's with certainty. Even the taste buds will taste better when you know this food is good. This is wholesome. My heart is at peace. And when you go eating something, I'm not quite sure. The food doesn't even taste good. So just
in Malaysia, you can be certain food is good.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah bless us, inshallah.
Yeah. So yeah, okay. So so uncertainty versus certainty.
Absolutely.
So if you're uncertain, ask someone who knows better.
Yeah, if you're in such doubt that, or you're in such confusion that you can't even know what you're feeling, then you can ask somebody. But again, it's still the heart that's going to tell you that. Because the question was about what if you're not at that level, and that's what you do if you're absolutely in a complete mess. But inshallah, we aspire to the wara of the Siddiqeen, of the highest level, inshallah.
Sure. Thank you, Sheikh.
Any further questions from anyone else?
Inshallah, maybe Sheikh Abdullah can finish with the final closing dua, inshallah.
ربنا انفعنا بما علمتنا رب علمنا الذي ينفعنا رب فقهنا وفقه لنا وقربات لنا في ديننا مع الأهل القطر أنثى وذكر رب وفقنا وفقه لما ترضي قولا وفعلا كرما وارزق كل حلالا دائما وأخلا أتقيا العلماء نحظى بقلب الخير ونغفى كل شر ربنا وأصلح لنا كل الشؤون وأقر بالرضا منك العيون واقض عنا ربنا كل الديون قبل أن تأتينا رسل المنون واغفر استر أنت أكرم عن من ستر وصلاة الله تخشى المصطفى من إلى الحق دعانا والوفاء بكتابه في الناس شفاء وعلى الآل الكرام الشرفاء وعلى الصحب مصاحب الغرر اللهم اهدنا بالهدى واجعلنا ممن يسارع في الرضا ولا تولنا وليا سواك ولا تجعلنا ممن خالف أمرك وعصاك وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أصرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فتب علينا توبة تغسل كل حوبة، واستر لنا العورات وآمن الروعات، واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا والأهل والإخوان وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرة أو صحبة والمسلمين أجمع آمين ربي اسمع فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نضى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نضى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نضى بكل سول صلى وسلم ربي عليه هدى حبي وآله وصحبه عدادة الصحب والحمد لله إلهي في البد والتناهي على سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. Inshallah, we'll meet up again the same time next week. Bismillah. Jazakallah khairan kathiran, Sheikh Aziz, for your class today. May Allah continue to bless you and the whole family, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.